Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'd like to call the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Marysville to order today, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. Happy Election Day, 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hudson.
Here.
Councilmember McKenzie. Here. Councilmember Simmons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Betticavoli.
Here.
And Mayor Sam Iowa.
Here. Welcome back, Vice Mayor. You missed last meeting.
Yeah. I feel much better.
Let's move to the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask everyone to please stand and join me on the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now let's move, I'd like to ask our city manager, Ms. Brown, if there are any changes to the agenda.
There are no changes.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to ask our city attorney if there are any closed sessions reports.
There is nothing to report.
Thank you. We'll move to our community consent calendar forum. We invite individuals wishing to address the City Council concerning consent calendar items or on matters not already on the agenda. We invite you to please make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. We ask you to please fill out a speaker's card and submit it to the city clerk. And when you're called, we ask you to please go to the podium and give your name clearly for audio recording. You're requested to address your comments to us, the council, and not to the audience. And by state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any items not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have any documentations that you would like to be distributed to the, if you have any documentations you'd like to have it distributed to the council, we ask you to please provide it to the city clerk as you approach the podium. Any members of the public like to make a comment on the community and consent calendar forum? Yes, sir. Come up.
Hello, my name is Stuart Gilchrist. I reside at 101 C Street in Marysville. Thank you for seeing me today. I've been asked to participate in the design of a monument within one of Marysville's mini parks. This monument would be paid for with private donors. It has strong community support. Given the recent news regarding our SPP grant, I propose the following. We move forward with 3 privately funded parks. However, we have no policy, so I ask that I work closely with city staff on this project. I've put together a packet for you, and in the packet you will see a few renderings. These are options for what is in Plaza Park. There's also a little elevation that shows how the park would be situated, taking advantage of the existing berm. There is a rendering, a photograph of the historic, it used to be the on-ramp to the D Street Bridge from E Street, and then there is a photograph of the park as it is today. And then there is a description of the 3 parks and a brief synopsis as to why I think we should tie these 3 together. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we'll be hearing from Robert Sands.
How you doing, sir?
Hello, sir. I'm doing wonderful. God bless you.
Thank you.
I'm here standing up for all of the homeless gentlemen and women out there with children. We believe that with all those open buildings out there in the city of Marysville that are being abandoned by businesses and everything, they're just emptied, we're believing, and I have signature from quite a few of the homeless people on paper to prove that they all agree that we should be able to use those buildings as shelter for weathering when we are homeless and we have no way of getting jobs or anything because of our disabilities, and we need a place to stay, to be warm and to be protected weather-wise and health-wise. And that's what I'm here to stand on, is the fact that the homeless people are feeling like we're being looked at like we don't exist. And we want to stand up and become something and part of the community again. That's what we're wanting to do. And that's my statement.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming down and taking the time. Did you leave a email or phone number?
I don't have either.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Seeing none, I'd like to move to the consent calendar items. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and therefore approved by one motion unless council member or city manager first requests that a matter be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion. There are 6 items. What's the will of the council?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Simmons, second by Ms. McKenzie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0. Before you leave, sir, I'm going to give you my car and I'll give you my cell number. Okay? You pass it. So let's move to discussion action calendar. All matters on this section are to be discussed and will be acted on individually. Members of the public may request to speak on any of these items up to 3 minutes, and we ask you to please also submit your speaker's card if you're interested in speaking in a particular item. Let's go to item 7. The request is to adopt the fiscal year 2019-2020 mid-year budget and any associated amendments, recommendations, to approve the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2019-20 mid-year budget and any associated amendments. Director Chisinski? No? Still bad? Sorry.
It's getting there.
It's getting there.
Yes, very much so. So, good evening, Mayor, council members, member of the public. We're here to present our mid-year financial status report. So the purpose of this item is to update the council on our fiscal 19-20 activity and any recommendations that we see in the annual budget accordingly. Sorry, we gotta. Yeah. Is there a switch? Sorry. Thank you. That's why I'm the finance person and not the IT person, because reasons like that. Okay, so to accomplish this, we're going to go through the following presentation. We're going to do an overview of the mid-year budget review process. Then we're going to talk about the general fund revenues and expenditures. We'll go briefly through the gas tax fund update, the SLESF update, or COPS fund, which is Citizens, oh crud, I forgot. Thank you. We'll find the acronym for that one. The Wastewater Enterprise Fund financial forecast update, and then the next steps. So as we were reviewing the budget, we were doing this consistent with the following review processes that we have up on the board. So we were going through the fiscal year 2019 preliminary results. This is unaudited. We still are working on the current audit, which should be hopefully done by in about the next 2 or 3 weeks. So we were going off of those numbers. We were going through our fiscal 19-20 experience to date, so what we have spent. And then we were making adjustments after reviewing information with management. So we had meetings with management to see where they were at. We also reviewed the one-time activities that we've been having within the funds. And then our changes and estimates are based on availability due to the information that we currently have at this moment. And then we do want to say that the budget recommendations that we have been made in a very conservative manner at that point too. Okay. So we're going to start with our first slide of going through the general fund of the revenues and expenditures. So I do want to note at this time that if you look at fiscal year 1920 adopted budget, that we do show the expenditures is greater than the revenues, which was passed during our budget, and these are due to the one-time expenses that we went through during the budget process. So if we look at what our estimated amounts are, we're looking at increasing the revenue side by $845,371 and expenses by $829,354. And so when we say resultant impact to the fund balance, this is a positive. So we're saying we're bringing in more revenue than the expenses. So we're not asking for in the general fund for more funding from the council. Okay. So as we're going through our revenues, this is where we're forecasting that we'll bring in about $845,000 more. So the top three are property taxes. We've listed sales tax and Measure C. And again, this is based when we do our original budgets during the beginning of the year. We base these very conservative. We work with an outside consultant, and we have seen a little bit of an increase of sales tax coming in due to the current, I don't remember the exact amount, but that you can bring more sales tax on sales to outside states. So Wayfair, sorry, it is the Wayfair decision. Try to remember the name of it. So we are seeing a little bit of higher uptick in sales tax because when people buy stuff from Amazon, we're able to collect a portion of that after it goes to the pool for the county and distributed. So that's the reason why it was up. We are also saying that for the cannabis tax, increase that by $150,000. We currently budgeted $50,000 when we started with the year, at the beginning of the budget, and that was due to the fact that we had not brought back recreational yet at that point or delivery, and we did not know how it was going to respond because this was our first full year of the cannabis tax. So we're seeing that we're going to at least bring in $200,000 for this current year, and it may even be a little bit higher. So, yeah.
In the sales tax, does that take into account of the new tax sharing revenue?
No, it does not at this time. Because at this time it has not been passed yet, so it's only on numbers that we could today substantiate. As we can tell, our construction permits have increased. Again, in the building department, we've had more permitting happening over there, and so when we made the budget, it was a very conservative estimate of what we believe we would bring in, so we have brought in more at that point. State mandated costs, again, are another item that we estimate looking over the past 3 or 4 years of history. This depends on how much we're able to collect from the state through a application that we fill out every year with them. And then post reimbursement. So we do not budget for post originally within the budget because post is reimbursed by the state for training for the police department, and there's never a guarantee that we're actually going to receive the funding, so we don't tend to put it in, and then we would come back to you with a budget adjustment throughout the year, because at any time they can decide not to reimburse us for post, or they may reimburse us $5,000, they may reimburse us $50,000. So instead of counting on money that we will not receive, we don't actually budget for that. So on the next page, when we're talking about, so the parentheses around it means that we're seeing that we will have a decrease in the revenue. And the reason for the FEMA SAFER grant is that when we originally put this in the budget, we budgeted for the entire fiscal year. It's not actually starting until March 1st, or actually this month. So what we're just reducing there is we won't bring in all of the income that we thought we would, because we're actually only running it for the program for 4 months versus running it for a full 12-month cycle.
Does that mean our shares also reduce, our costs?
Correct. So that's also part of reducing on the salary side, is we're not going to have the revenue to offset that because we budgeted for a full year. And then when it came to the Cal Water grant, that is a grant that we received again after the budget was complete. That was another one that our fire chief was able to get for us. Strike team revenue, we decreased that or we're projecting that we're going to decrease it around $70,000 this year. We have not seen the fires that we had in the past, so again, strike team is one of those items that's harder to predict on how much we're going to bring in because we don't know how many fires we may or may not have. The flip side of this is that if you're going to reduce the revenue side of it, we also reduce the expense, because then you wouldn't have the strike team expense on the other side of it. So a lot of these are also, if we're talking about adding more or decreasing, on the expense side, a lot of times we're seeing that same either increase or decrease, that they're a wash, but we're making you aware that we are changing the budget within that. Obviously, fire cost recovery is new, as we just started doing that after the current year budget. And then also at the bottom, you're going to see a large number for $775,000 for bond proceeds. And that is due that when we did the pension obligation bond in September, October, at that point, we had already paid for 3 months of pension UAL payments. So the bond paid off our 2021 payments forward, and then the 1920 was still within the payment, but it wasn't paid directly. It was paid to the city, and then we turned around and paid off the UAL. It wasn't allowed to be done through the actual bond. Bond could only pay off a certain amount, and we had to pay off the remaining. So we didn't make any money off of that. We didn't lose any. It was just that it actually flowed through our books before we paid it off to the state.
Question to the chair. The FEMA grant and the fire strike team grant, are you reducing the fire department budget by $70,000 and $268,000?
Yes, we did.
You reducing that?
Let me just, sorry, Andy was the one who, Mr. Heath was the one who helped us put together the mid-year budget, so he has all the detailed numbers on that.
I was
So-
just curious because I thought you said it was a decrease, that has to decrease from something, so there's the adopted budget.
Yeah, for the FEMA SAFER grant, it's recognized that at the beginning of the year, the budget for the FEMA SAFER individuals was for all year. So you'll see that on both the expenditure side and personnel services, and also on the revenue side with the grant revenue. Recognizing that 8 months have gone by before this grant has actually started in its full, you have a savings on both sides. So we're not going to take all the money, because you can't get reimbursed for the first 8 months. So that will carry over into the end of the grant, presumably. And at the same time, you don't have the SAFER individuals incurring the costs that were originally budgeted as well. With the strike team, at the beginning of the year, the city did budget an amount of strike team revenue that was anticipated to come in. It was more of an in and an out. You have strike team overtime on one side. You'll see that being reduced on the expenditure side. And then you have that overtime being reimbursed by this line item, the strike team reimbursement. Because there weren't very many strike teams statewide this year that were anticipated, we're reducing both of those as well.
So what I'm hearing you say in a very layman's sense, we're going to reduce the adopted budget by this amount of money.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, and that's just a one-time reduction.
Yeah.
Because next year, you'll see that, definitely for the FEMA SAFER grant, you'll see that go back up on both the expenditure side and the revenue side. And then strike team, we'll have to work with the fire chief to see exactly what he anticipates for strike team. Typically, a strike team is an in and an out, and I wouldn't put that in a budget, in a general fund budget, because it's just that, it's an in and an out. But for the administrative reimbursement and the apparatus reimbursement, which should go into a special fund specifically for fire purposes, which is what it's for. So we'll have a conversation from a management perspective on whether or not that's included next year.
I guess you look at $300,000 reduction. You afford that, chief? You going to come out of your wallet? That's a big hit.
Yeah, it's one time, and it's on both sides.
Yeah, I understand, but still.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
But it wasn't general fund money that we're taking out, it's just we didn't actually receive the money. So we're not taking away anything that wasn't actually already received by the city.
What I'm saying, that it was budgeted in his budget, his total budget, that money was appropriated, and now
Correct.
we're going to take it out. So any plans he had to use
But the
that
only thing
money-
he could use for that would be salaries for SAFER, and since we haven't had any salaries for it, we actually haven't expended. We'll expend 4 months of, we still left enough in there so that he will be able to do 4 months worth of SAFER grants for the 3 engineers, I think 3 engineers or 3 firefighters that we did hire that are starting this month.
Yeah, I saw that in the staff analysis. So, but you left him a little bit to breathe by, right?
Oh, yes, we
Okay,
did, for sure.
thank you.
It's like any other department. If we didn't have a department head in there for 6 months and it was budgeted, then that 6 months, we wouldn't let them use for somebody else. It was intended for that purpose, so we would repurpose the funding. This, we're not repurposing because we haven't even actually received it. We received no money from SAFER yet. It'll be reimbursable.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So, you're welcome.
I have a question. Are we anticipating any income from the fire equipment mechanic, or is that too far down the road yet?
We haven't done the analysis on that. We're still figuring out what we're going to charge for that, and that will be something that we'll have figured out for the budget for next year, because at this time, we haven't even hired for that position. So we have to get somebody in the position and figure out how we're going to allocate time.
Okay.
But it is on a list that we're working on for next year's budget, correct?
Okay, thank you.
So that is the revenue side for the general fund. So next, we're going to talk about the increases or decreases in appropriations to the expenditures. So as we're going through here, if it does have a parentheses around it, that means that we're reducing that overall budget. And if it doesn't, that means we're asking for an increase in that budget. So under the city manager, city clerk's department, we're asking for an increase due to an increase in professional services and our MRG contract. And just to let you know, MRG is the company that's been helping us with municipal code updates, ordinances, staff mentoring, and also with the elections. Under the HR budget, we're asking also for an increase in there, and most of it's due to another contract we've been using with RGS, and they've been working on HR issues, recruitment, HR policies, labor negotiations, and helping us to clean up our HR department since at this point, we've had with labor negotiations and with a lot of recruitments that we have, we want to make sure that we're up to date. In the finance department, we also have another increase, and that is due to, again, to professional services and leave payouts. So in several of the other departments, when we changed our health insurance to offset increases, we didn't have that same in the finance department, where it didn't offset any increases. And then the other part with that is we've had a lot of vacancies with our senior accountant. So we did budget for a full year of a senior accountant, but we did have a consultant working with us from July to September till that person was hired. And then also once the senior left from January to March, we've also had another consultant. So there is some salary savings with not having a senior, but obviously when you hire consultants to help you with staffing, it does come at a higher cost. So that's why there is an increase in the finance department, was to offset for the senior accountant vacancy. And the other part in there too is also, which you're going to see in another few pages, is also for a increase in the salary range to the senior accountant to be able to hire that position. So that's also included in this amount. When we look at information systems, we're also looking at another increase around $46,000. This was presented by the police chief in his IT presentation on the 4th of February when we went through the cybersecurity issues that we were having, upgrading council chambers, updating our servers so that we can have Granicus and other items to get us up to date with our IT services. So in our next slide, with the police department, we're also asking for another increase in that department. So again, with our health insurance, we did have health insurance offset salaries, but also approved by council, is we also had payouts that we did when we did labor negotiations. So the payouts that were done were offset by the amount of the health increase, so there was not a saving there. That part was almost a wash. With this budget, we've also had very few vacancies throughout the year, but the other part with that is that we've had a lot of people in training. So right now we're fully staffed. However, we have 3 people who are in training. So while they're in training for 4 months, we have to backfill all their shifts with overtime. So we're paying for a full-time employee, and then we're also paying to backfill the position because they can't be out on their own yet. So you still have to cover all the positions. So it's a good thing to be fully staffed, but as we have new people, our overtime has greatly increased due to the fact of back pain as we're training new officers. And then the other part we put in there is we have increased his training budget, and that was due to the fact that now that we talked about in the earlier slide, we've received at least $24,000 from Post. Now we want to turn around and increase his training budget because now we have a reimbursement. So again, that is another one of those washes, but that does increase his overall budget for training because now we've been reimbursed. And then we did have some more money come in on a grant that was not in the original budget. So when it comes to the fire department, we're looking at an overall decrease in that, and a lot of it we talked about earlier is we're lowering the strike team overtime because due to the fact that we have not been on strike teams. So we do have two separate buckets for overtime. We've built in a strike team overtime and we built in just a regular. So we weren't touching the regular overtime. This was just due to the fact that we are not going to have as much overtime due to strike teams. So we have reduced to that. With the fire department, the salary increases were offset pretty much by the health cost decrease. There was not much of a savings there due to the fact that those positions have been filled, and when we came to you with the budget of bringing the cost increases to salaries, we said we'd be able to offset it by the healthcare deductions, and that's what is happening here. We also had some radio equipment that was funded, that we moved out of the general fund into the capital project fund. Last year, we had some extra Prop 172 funds that did come to council for approval, and we had moved the funding out of the general account into the into this capital project account. And so as radios have come in, instead of taking it out of the general fund, we have taken it out of the capital improvement fund, because when we moved that over, it was for equipment purchases that were going to come up in this current fiscal year. And then there's another offset too, because we still have from 2000 and whenever we had the fire station damage, I can't remember the year, was it October 17? Okay. So that claim is pretty much, we're winding it up. There were still a few loose items that were still being spent and finishing up. And so we did have some expenses due to that, but then also on the other page that we had looked at, it talked about an increase in insurance reimbursements. That is offsetting. So insurance reimbursements that came in is offsetting the damage that was done and what's been paid out of this account. So again, we still had to put it in there because we do have an increase in expenses due to that fact. Okay, so if we're moving next into planning and zoning, so we are looking at a fairly significant decrease in this account. So part of that is due to the fact that when we originally did the full budget on this, we did budget for 12 months of a full-time community development director. After the budget was passed, or right around the time, that's when the director left. So we've had 6 months of savings. However, we did hire an outside contractor to come in and to act as our contract director during that time, which pretty much offset most of it. But there still is some vacancy savings, the fact that we didn't have a community development director in at that time. The other part with that, with the large amount with the professional services, is at this time we had originally put in funding originally for our master fee schedule to hire someone to do that, and also for $50,000 for a general plan manager. And at this time, the general plan has not been moving forward, so we added that amount back in to the budget to be used in other departments. And that's why we're asking for a fairly large decrease in the planning zoning budget. So when it came to building an engineer, the part why we're asking for reduction there is that we had a chief building officer who we had budgeted, he was part-time, but he was budgeted full-time for the entire year. He left at the end of November, and so there is savings left in his budget due to the fact that we're not having a chief building officer for the entire year. And then also on professional services, we had built in more for plan checks, and that has been coming in less than we originally budgeted. So we've decided to lower that amount. On economic stability, so we are asking for an increase here. Under professional services, where that is from the fireworks display that we put on. It went into this account. Again, that's another one, though. We are increasing the amount of the budget, but we're also offsetting it by the fact that we brought in the same amount of revenue in. So we're offsetting on the other half. So it is a wash, but it did bring up the overall budgets in both of those accounts, so we're letting you know that. And same with the holiday festival expenses. This is for Sapphire Marketing, since we hired them after the fact of the budget planned. We had built into there to pay them more than what we originally put in the budget because they were not hired when we originally put the budget together for the Peach Festival that's coming up and for the Christmas Festival, or sorry, the Christmas parade that just happened. And then the last one on here is in parks maintenance. And when we're saying salary distributions, we're asking for a little bit of extra in here. So in the old account, the old community development director and the assistant development director were both in the planning budget. So we did not, when we've reallocated and structured both of the besides the hall, we made community development director and a public works director. We did not originally allocate a portion of the public works director within the parks budget. Originally, it was all under the planning budget. So with Mr. Platt coming in, we've now refigured out an allocation for him between parks, planning, streets, and wastewater. So this is just to do the adjustment of, there's a savings for him up in planning, but we wanted to reallocate it to parks where it does truly belong, as we've now allocated his salary to the appropriate departments.
Through the chair. On the parks maintenance, since we have about $140-some thousand obligation on Ellis Lake, did we account for any staff time in doing that project, as well as the director, as well as the city manager? You know, we were authorized to deduct staff time in support of that aeration project.
Okay.
I don't want to forget that, because that's some big bucks we could take right out, put it right in the salary for the city manager, Mr. Plant at that time, as well as staff from the Public Works Department.
Okay, so I'll look into that, and we'll get back to you on that one.
That could be some big dollars. I'm understanding we're having a little difficulty spending that money. I think we can take care of that.
And my pencil died, sorry, just one moment. Okay. And then the other item I want to note on this one is that when we did sell surplus property, there was an amount for a trailer in there. And so we have now reallocated, it was $2,000, we went back to the paperwork on it, and it was $2,600 that will be reallocating into the boat dock parks
Yes.
line item for you. So we just wanted to note that we have also moved that.
Yeah, there's my trailer. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And we
Absolutely.
double checked the numbers to make sure that that was what was.
Well, I did
I
too.
actually looked at the paperwork today just to verify that we had the correct amount on there. So
Good job.
that is the amount from the sale of the surplus items.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we're going to move into buildings and grounds, and we are looking at reducing this, and this is due to the fact that there's lower utilities. So I've actually looked at the budget, and we've been under budget for the past 2 years in this account due to the solar panels. And so now with the new budget coming into effect, we're going to now be, this is one of those budgets we're going to be readjusting and looking at, because we don't want to be putting our funds into this if we're historically keeping it lower when we can reallocate this funding to somewhere else. So this is one of those items that helps us with budgeting for next year of how to improve it. So under street maintenance, there is an increase in here, and that is due to the fact that we originally only budgeted $220,000 on our MOE, our maintenance of effort. We did find out after the budget was complete, we had an audit from the state who came in and looks at our street fund, and our MOE is technically supposed to be $289,000 and some change every year. So part of that is to make up the difference. And then the other part we put down here is the additional funding from the PERS savings. So when we brought this to council a few months ago, that when we had extra savings from the bond from not having to pay our UAL for the entire year, we were reallocating a portion of that into the almost was about $900 and something thousand street project. And so this is just reallocating the money that was technically in the UAL account that we're going to pay for unfunded liability and moving it into the street project, as we talked about and designated a few months back.
So, through the chair, this will satisfy our MOI now on that
And we
street?
correct.
So we don't have the 500,000 we were talking about, that's been adjusted to 463,000.
Correct, so then every year from here on out, we're going to have to at least designate the 289,000 and change every year, but now we have that amount.
So we're caught up, thank you.
And then I have been working or talking with Director Platt, and that is one of those items that we do plan on, him and I are reviewing, hopefully over the summer, to see if we can reduce that amount so we don't have a higher amount that we need to pay in for our obligation to be able to get our SB1 funding. So again, it's another place that we're going to go to see if we can find some more money in our general fund by not having to overpay into programs. So we'll be working on that too over the summer. And then under general services, we're also asking for a reduction. The largest part there is we originally were going to transfer $80,000 out of our general fund into a capital project for the ADA transitional fund or transitional plan. And right now we're saying that's only going to be around $10,000. Craig was able to help us with getting that project done and completed so we don't need to put it out to contractors. So there's a savings there. And then we also were asking for some increased in professional services, and I should have put / communications. We are been running over budget on telephone and communications, so we do need to increase that amount right there. And then when I say contributions to agencies, is that we did, our LAFCO bill was about $3,500 more than what we originally budgeted for. Our LAFCO that we paid this year was about $3,500 more than what the original budget for was the invoice that came into us. And I do know that's something that Marty and I have talked about, of talking with LAFCO and figuring out the reduction in it. So that is also another one that we, is on our list of projects to be working on.
She did say LAFCO, didn't she, Mayor?
LAFCO.
I caught that, too.
Did I say it wrong?
No, you said it right.
Oh. Well, we also do it by what we have seen in past years, and we receive the invoice after. If I had an invoice or kind of had an idea what was ahead of time, we would have had a better appropriation in there. But by the time we did the budget, we received the invoice after the fact, and so we were looking at past histories. So,
But then by them raising it, it's based on their budget, is that what you said?
correct. And that is one of those items, I will be reaching out to Paige and see if I can get a better idea of what that amount's going to be before we head into the budget this year, so that we'll have the correct amount in here, so we don't have to come back with any kind of a budget adjustment in the future.
Okay.
So I can work with Paige on that one, Paige Hensley. So since we've just talked about all the departments, this is a good time to talk about the fact that we are also looking at some recommended new hires and some salary increases within our positions here. So I do want to let you know that any increases that we are talking about here, we have already built into all the numbers that you did just see in all the past slides. So right now, we are looking at a salary increase overall, increase in the range of the senior accountant to the amount that we had listed there. So we're looking at a possibility of hiring, if all these are passed, hiring these positions. And if we do that, it's going to be about 2.5 months worth into the budget that we'll be needing an increase for. So I did want to let you know that it would be around 89, if we actually hired someone middle of April for this job, it would cost about $8,900 for the remaining of the year to fund this position with this increase that we have listed here. With a fire mechanic, with a new range, that's okay? Correct. So in the consent calendar was the job descriptions that already went through, and this would be approving to actually hire for these positions and what the salary ranges would be.
And Jennifer, we already have the senior accountant position. This
Correct.
is just a salary increase.
So we're looking at salary increase due to recruiting issues, because we found out with every time we've done a recruitment, we haven't been bringing in the pool of people that are qualified for the job. And when discussing this with other agencies, we found out it's really come down to the fact that we don't have a high enough salary. And to be able to bring people from outside area to come into this area, we're going to have an increase in that position. So with the fire mechanic, it's the same.
I got one question on it. So if we already have that position established, although not full, what's the actual increase? We're not increasing by this full position.
No,
I think I missed that part.
it would be around $8,900 for this year to what we have currently budgeted to bring somebody in.
I got you. Okay, I'm
Correct.
sorry, I missed that
Sorry,
part.
it's okay. And we're also, I want to say on that part, I do budgets a little bit higher in the fact, because we don't know if someone's going to come in and what kind of benefits that they're going to want. So we do want to we do want to build this thinking that they're going to come in asking or wanting family benefits. So we do build that into the budget when we build the projections, so that we don't build it saying it's going to be someone come in that's in a single only, and then we're then we're under budget. So this is the one part of the budget that we do over kind of shoot, because we want to make sure that we're covering them coming in for any benefits that they may choose when they come in. So that would be the maximum amount that it would cost if we got somebody starting mid-April by the time we went through the hiring process. So these could also be lower amounts. I'm just kind of giving you worst case scenarios with these positions right now. So same with the fire mechanic. So you can.
I think
Not for these positions, we did not. We have other positions, yes.
Oh, I thought
Like-
we did it for the entire,
Well, when you passed the MOU, there were salary ranges within the MOU, correct? So we're proposing.
We gave them an increase, yes.
Correct.
But, I mean, the only one that we brought forward, like individually like this, was the support services manager, last December. But yes, through the MOUs, I mean, yes.
so are
there's
these
those.
new positions that you're proposing?
The senior accountant is existing, the fire mechanic would be a new position, building inspector one is a slight change in the description from what we already have on the books, and an increase in salary. The assistant planner is trading out the community improvement specialist, which was filled by Jessica Martinez.
Right.
It's a slight salary increase as well. And the fire chief's administrative assistant is currently a part-time position that's budgeted for, and we're asking to make it full-time.
I guess I just don't want to put more pressure on your current structure. Like, if, is this gonna add additional pressure? Are we gonna come back in a couple years and say, because of this new salary range, it's gonna put pressure on the other positions?
Well, the assistant planner position, I have a sort of a little bit of a longer-winded answer, maybe it's not a simple yes or no, but the assistant planner position is already a classification that we had on the books.
Okay.
And so that position.
Fits already in your.
It does, and they got it, that classification got an increase when Teamsters got an increase. Does that
Perfect,
make sense?
yes.
So that happened. The building inspector one, ironically, previously was making less than the assistant planner position, and so it seemed like it would be really difficult to hire for someone at that level who'd be making less than an assistant planner, so we thought we'd just make them match and be the same salary, since one needs a college education and the other one is a certification kind of position. So we matched those up, so it's a slight increase there. And the fire mechanic is probably the one that's the most different of all these positions, and the thinking was Chief Carlin has done quite a bit of canvassing the region to see if there's an interest on the part of other jurisdictions to possibly use a fire mechanic, because everybody ships all of their apparatus to Sacramento, and there is quite a bit of interest, so we're thinking that with this position, we would actually be able to.
May generate revenue.
Exactly, farm out those services to other jurisdictions.
Through the chair,
Yes.
that community services inspector, are you doing away with that position and filling it with assistant planner?
No. The building inspector position right now is currently budgeted as a.
No, I'm talking about the community, the CIS.
Yes, we're proposing to replace the CIS community improvement specialist position with an assistant planner position. The assistant planner position, though, would have a some similar duties as the CIS position had. Nuisance abatement and sort of that, for lack of better word, lower level code enforcement activity like illegal vehicles and illegal dumping and those kinds of things. So the assistant planner would do some project assistant to the community development director as well as some nuisance abatement activities.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think that is mixing assignments. A planner and a community inspector, code enforcement is not the same. And if we think we're going to put assistant planner in to go out there and write citations up for code enforcement, I don't see that happening. And I don't think it's not in the purview of a planner.
Counselor
We need
Simmons?
to think about that a little bit before we start deleting positions.
So, Councilmember Simmons, if I could explain the connection between the assistant planner and the building inspector. The vision was that they would share together.
I'm not talking about, Marty, I'm not talking about the building inspector, I'm talking about the CIS person. The new position replacing the CIS. Isn't that a code enforcement person? The CIS?
It was nuisance abatement, yes,
Yeah.
but they're not qualified to do the kind of code enforcement that building inspector.
Well, I don't think assistant planner is qualified to do code enforcement.
The building inspector will share the code enforcement.
Assistant planner is the one you're saying you're replacing. You're saying the assistant planner, a new position replaces a CIS, salary range 46 to 57.
Correct.
And I don't think a planner can do code enforcement. I don't think that's relative to the job assignment you have as a planner.
Let me allow Jonathan maybe to provide his reasoning behind it.
Thank you, Mayor. Counselor Simmons, so the way we structured this this new scenario here was to provide for a planning position that would do the nuisance abatement things. Now, in the world I've been living in for the last 14 years, many of our planners actually did our code enforcement items. So if you look at the way that that position was structured, Jessica Martinez was doing about 60% code enforcement, about 40% planning. So we've kind of shifted that FTE from being 60% code enforcement to being 60% planning with 40% code enforcement because they're only handling the nuisance items, the litter abatements, the complaints that come in, about vehicles left out, things like that. And then the building inspector, which Jessica was actually handling before, which wasn't necessarily within her qualifications, she was going out and actually working with people that were building without permits. This structure was actually going to increase our capacity to have somebody that actually goes out and works on derelict structures and writes code. If you look at the consent agenda, you'll notice that both those job descriptions reference what I'm referring to right now. And it also refers to a higher level of code enforcement, including writing our own code or things, policies that will allow them to go out and do the enforcement with the task force. So it creates a more dynamic structure in my mind when we put it together. And so it actually is going to provide better coverage for code enforcement than we currently had under the structure with only one individual.
Well, the reason I say that, Jonathan, is the fact I know the code enforcement has not fulfilled 60% filling of that position. If you look around the city, we have a lot of problems. And they're code enforcement problems. And that to me would be a full-time position, code enforcement, to take care of that. And it's sort of disingenuous to say a assistant planner is going to be a code enforcement for 40% or whatever the case, your percentages. I just feel that this city needs a full-time code enforcement officer to do the things they should be doing. And I think that I just have a problem with that. That's me.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes, Mr. Simmons. That's 7 months from now.
Councilmember Simmons?
Yes, sir.
What I hear from staff is that the building inspector will do kind of the high-level building inspector, those buildings that are tearing down. That's not what the code enforcement officer should be doing. What they should be doing is going after, the nuisance, the stuff that we see, So it seems like there's two separate jobs. One needs a bit more of an engineering or more of a health and safety understanding in the building inspector versus, the other person who's already doing some planning, but we're going to need additional planning as we move forward and things. I think what they're proposing will allow us to be more aggressive in moving forward like we want. We want to make sure that the property owners are taking care of their buildings and are especially if they're being lived on or businesses are being provided in there that that their health and safety are being maintained and taken care of. And that's the building inspector one, right? That's a new position that you're trying to hire, and that's going to do a lot of that stuff, a lot of the efforts to enhance our community, which I think that's what you're, in my mind, visualizing when we see some of the more deteriorated buildings that we need to take care of, and that the CIS might not have that type of capacity to deal with some of those older buildings. So this new position, in my mind, makes sense to have. So I agree with creating the new position. I kind of see your point about having a planner dealing with code enforcement, but in my mind, I trust our director who's out in, who's done it and is in the real world, and I believe that I'm going to trust his perspective, being that he's new, and so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. It better be more efficient department out there, but anyway, so I'm okay with it. So I'm okay with that, with your vision, and so I support your positions.
In retaliation to that, if I might, it was never jeopardizing that wasn't my intent. My intent was putting a planner in to do community service and code enforcement. And as far as building inspector, I wasn't even talking about that. But I do know from a fact, after 6 years on this city council, that code enforcement has had a horrible time trying to maintain code enforcement. Code enforcement, not police enforcement, but code enforcement on the city. And you can drive through the city any place you want to look. Right back here where we just code enforced that one on Ramirez, it's starting to build up again. There's garbage all piled up in the back of that. And I just feel when Are we going to have a community service, CIS? Is there going to be one?
There will not.
That's what I thought. Okay, you're the boss, but I have to approve it, so I want to make sure that I go on record that I oppose that. So,
I appreciate your concern.
thank you.
Any other comments on this list, so we can kind of make sure that we have everyone on board on this area? Any questions on these recommendations? Yes?
Although these are listed as all new positions, almost every one of them have an offset from another position, or, right? It looks to me, the senior accountant, we had something in place, obviously, you just said it's really an $8,900 increase. The fire mechanic, we now don't have a fleet mechanic, so there's an offset to that, correct?
Correct, around
Same thing, the
4,400.
building inspector, we were subbing out, but now,
We have a part-time temporary building inspector, so
So-
it'll all go towards this now.
okay, and
Assistant
then
planner
again,
was-
with the fire chief's administrative assistant, it's not an increase of this amount, it's a matter of moving them to full-time.
Correct.
And there's a lot smaller amount. So it's a little deceiving, because it looks like all these new positions are increased, or being
Added.
put into place.
Yeah.
And so all these salaries are being there, but there's almost an offset
It's
for
an-
everything, is that correct?
$7,000 for all combined positions.
Okay, that's a big difference. Okay.
That would have been a great number to put right
Yeah, to start with.
I had it,
Oh, okay.
She had the number.
I have it on my notes, so yes, I didn't have it written down.
That would have been a beautiful number.
But like I said, 27,000 if
Yeah,
we fill
you
it
gotta
on
put a
time.
star flash.
All right, thank you.
I'm learning how to do these presentations, so. Like I said, the numbers are easy for me. It's the talking out loud that is something I struggle with, is why I went into the field that I did, so that I could just look at numbers all day long, so.
So we
I'll
still
take, I'll
haven't
take, I'll
resolved
take
that.
notes of that when I bring the budget back, so that we have a little bit better clarity too, when I start bringing back budget numbers for you guys at this time. So right now, we're
But
looking at.
Just
an-
remember, we're sensitive
You haven't resolved it.
about
okay.
spending money.
That's good. You guys should be sensitive. It's not our money, it's our citizens, so it's a
Correct.
good thing to be. So just to let you know, if we want a little bit of a breakdown, so the senior accountant would be around 8,900. The fire mechanic would be at 4,400. A building inspector one would be an increase around 2,600. An assistant planner would be 3,300, and the chief's assistant would be around 7,800.
That makes
That's
more sense.
For the remainder of the fiscal year.
Correct. And the reason why the assistant is a little bit higher, even though you're going to go with the salary range is lower, is because when you go to full-time, now we have to roll up benefits, PERS, other items that we did not with the full-time person. So that's why there's the more significant increase
If I
there.
could just add that in this recommendation, we're also asking you to actually approve 2 new salary range increases for the senior accountant and the fire mechanic overall.
Right.
All of the rest either happened through the MOU process and, the other 3 happened through Teamsters MOU process. But these 2 are new salary increase ranges.
Do we have the numbers of what the old salary ranges were?
I can give them to you. I have them written down
Okay.
because I knew it might happen. Okay.
She thought she asked that.
Correct, so I do have all the ranges. Okay, so for the senior, the bottom was $53,201, and the top step was $69,827.
Okay.
For the fire mechanic, the bottom was $37,435, and top was $46,794. So there is a slight increase, though, in the building inspector, because as we were saying, the assistant planner, we made those equal in salaries. So the bottom step would be $43,560. So as you can tell, that's a pretty small increase. And the top step would be,
Would have been,
oh, sorry, I wrote down the wrong numbers on that. So your salary range, oh, no, you're right, sorry. That was my bad. Your bottom range was 54,000. Okay, let me start over again. Bottom was 43,560. Your top range was 54,450. Wrote too many notes together. So on the assistant planner, we're not talking about any type of salary increase. That's what's in the approved MOU. And then the same thing with the chief's admin assistant, is that was what was already in the current salary range too. So no increases to the bottom 2.
Okay.
So we're gonna go ahead and let that float by, right? The CIS, we're not gonna test that anymore? Am I the only one that opposes that?
Is there any other
Unless-
comments regarding that?
I'll just comment. I understood it to be that the code enforcement would be covered by two different people. Is that right?
That is correct. Correct.
So between the building inspector and the assistant planner, they would cover both aspects of code enforcement. So we won't be missing out on anything. It's been happening already that way, I think, except that we're
Your
just
wildest
changing the
dream,
title.
Councilwoman. In your wildest dream. Anyway,
We're actually adding more because we're adding a full-time inspector
time will.
while we have a part-time contractor. We're adding, more resources out in the field, which is great. Any other comments on that?
Well, this isn't a win-lose for me.
No, I just want to know if
I
there's
wanna
any
make
more
that-
comments on this item, because then we can just move forward. Seeing none, we'll move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so the next slide we're going to be talking about is an increase in non-departmental, which is basically what we're asking for here is that we received more. We had an adjustment from our UAL from our unfunded pension liability because from our payoffs that we talked about earlier that were offset by proceeds. So we had to pay more to CalPERS for our UAL, but it was offset by the proceeds that came in. So it didn't cost us any more, but this is just an adjustment for that payment that we did have to make. And then the second one down was the PERS bond interest. So we did have a $164,000 interest payment that was due, I think it was the beginning of January, and that was our first payment from the new UAL, but it was able to be absorbed by the current budget since we had already budgeted almost $1 million. So we're just letting you know on that offset. And then under general debt, we're asking for a reduction. So when we originally came to you with the B Street property, with doing the refunding of that, we guesstimated of what we thought an interest payment would be, and we estimated that payment to be around $211,000 for the year. Well, through the market obviously being so great as it was, and through the works of our municipal finance advisor, we were actually able to have a lower amount of our interest rate, so as an increase or a decrease in our overall payments. And so our first payment was actually only $110,000 versus the $211,000, so that's why there was the $101,000. Again, that was brought to you when we came to the bonds, and then we talked about the street project. This $101,000 went towards the street project, the MOE. So the increase in the MOE is now being offset by this $101,000 here. So it's just a reallocation of those funds. And then the other
Question on that. So it's not a savings, it's a
well, it was a savings that you determined you
I know how we
asked
got
to
the
reallocate
savings,
to the street
but
project.
you want to reallocate it to the medical arts? And
already-
that plan is 174?
No, sorry, that's a completely separate line, so that's from this. So originally, when we did the refunding of the bond,
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. The
I thought those
101,000
were tied together.
they're separate
Okay.
items, but
Gotcha.
we approved it with the street project that we did. So we
Okay.
also wanted to put under here, is we're not asking for any adjustment, but originally in the budget was $174,000 for a payment for the general plan, and we're asking to move that money instead to be used for the medical arts district specific plan. So it's not an increase or decrease, it's just a reallocation of the original funding.
Question, Mayor.
Yes?
On the B Street property, weren't we paying something like $640,000 a year on that?
Correct.
And now we're talking about a $101,000 decrease?
But that was just the first year's payment, because we knew
Yeah.
when our payments now are,
575-ish, aren't they?
yes, somewhere
No,
around there. I'm
they're-
trying to remember what the exact amount was.
So that's the difference, so 101,000 is the
It's
variance?
just, when we knew we were going to do the B Street refunding, at the beginning of the budget season, we didn't know how much that payment was going to be, so we just estimated on a payment. So this isn't the overall payment, what's going to be every year. This was just the savings and what we originally thought we were going to have to pay in the first year.
Because we reduced the payment from 640 down
Correct.
to how much?
So around 575. So future years, we'll already have that built into the budget. This was just a one-time.
And that's a 30-year
savings.
note?
You what?
No.
30 year?
It's
20
through
years?
the end. It's by 18. We didn't extend it beyond the original scope of what was already listed for the time frame. We kept everything already within, so if it had an 18-year note or 30-year note, we didn't increase anything.
It's 18.
But no, we-
That was 18, sorry. There's been a few of those, so we're getting all these dates. Okay, so then our next slide is we just want to go through our general fund, our recommended
Wait,
reserves.
hold on one second.
Oh,
I want to go back
ahead.
to this, the reallocating again. So we're taking that from the general plan monies to the medical arts district. So is that going to be a sharing cost that we share with the hospital?
So we had, if you recall, had asked the council to approve in last year's budget, taking out like a 10-year loan at an interest rate not to exceed 3% for $1.5 million to do. So we've learned some things since then. I've learned some things about what I can and can't do, and so we're looking at other options. But it just so happens we also already have a proposal from PlaceWorks to look at doing a specific plan for the medical arts district that we seeded some money a little over, probably a year and a half ago now. And they came up with a proposal. We presented it to the hospital. They're very interested in it. And we asked them if they would share the cost, 50-50 basically, of potentially moving forward with a specific plan. They seem interested in it. That 50% is just about $171,000. So.
Can you talk about the advantage of having a specific plan to
Sure.
grow that?
So, with a specific plan, or would be a geographic area around the hospital to be identified in partnership with the city and the hospital. We would be looking at potentially changing zoning. Anything that's already there would be grandfathered in, but as time goes on and the hospital might make some acquisitions, the zoning would already be changed, and we would have already done a general plan amendment and CEQA once for all the property. It's based on their vision for their growth as they potentially acquire new property. Which means that every time they buy a piece of property, they wouldn't have to change the zoning, do a general plan amendment, and do CEQA, which every parcel, you would have to, possibly, potentially, you could have to do that every time, which is a considerable cost versus doing it once.
Unless it's in their specific plan.
Correct.
And then, not just growth for the hospital, but I mean, we would also plan out maybe other development around the hospital or other opportunities as people are looking for investment, whether it's whatever it may be, that they might want to redo that entire street under, maybe some underused buildings or something. Some other investors can come in and they already know exactly what they can build in that.
Do we have the,
To meet the needs of that kind of the hospital district.
do we have that district defined yet? Or will it be done in this plan?
This process would be, we've talked about it with the hospital in broad strokes of, something as maybe far south as kind of what could be Second Street, all the way over to I Street, up to Sixth Street and to E Street is roughly, in broad strokes, the conversation that I've already had with them a couple times. But it would actually be vetted through the specific plan process, the specific boundaries.
Okay.
Through the chair, we spent a lot of money on that bounce back program, and that arts and medical district is in that. And now we're going to go back and reorganize that again. Why can't we be looking at that entity and find out to implement that? Is that so antiquated now that we can't? That was a lot of money and a lot of effort.
I think you're right. I think there's a lot of elements in there, ideas that came out of that and projects that I think maybe this specific plan, I think this goes a lot further than just kind of specific maybe ideas of things that could have worked in the arts medical district, which I think they did a good job. And I think the community participated in kind of dreaming what it could be. This actually goes even deeper, goes into the actual land use, zoning, environmental mitigation, parking, circulation, some other things that they're going to need for them to be able to develop. So a new developer doesn't have to go through that, that exercise each time they want to develop something. Now we have a specific plan. It's almost like a mini general plan for that little area that's going to talk about the land use, the environmental, the mitigation issues, the parking, all the other stuff that they need for that particular area. And I think for us, my whole frustration has been to waiting for the general plan, to wait for people to come in and try to invest in us to find out what our land use is going to be. I think this makes it faster, and working with the hospital, who already knows they're going to grow, they already know they're going to acquire land. And so each time they acquire land, and they'll come back with a proposal for the city. So we actually reducing the time for it to hopefully get developed to a, you know, a more fruitful piece of zone or commercial, you know, district. Go ahead.
Being on that bounce back, I can tell you, it was more conceptual than it was specific. And obviously, the medical arts was one of it, but it was a lot more conceptual than specific.
No, but it was a conceptual plan to develop an area, the 4 areas in the city of Marysville. Now, we need to amend that because the city council approved that as an economic development plan. So now if we go back in and pull out this, like the mayor's saying, and I have no objection to that, I think that's really smart thinking. But just don't throw that out, the baby out with the dishwater. I mean, we spent a lot of money on that and a lot of community input.
I know I spent a lot of time on it.
You betcha, and I was on that for a short period of time too.
So I know Jonathan's listening, and he's gonna pull it out, right? Or you haven't pulled it out
already
yet?
has.
Oh, he's already read
He
it
already
forward
has.
and backwards.
And I bet there's a lot of things in there that you might be able to incorporate in this planning process, right?
Yes.
It could be definitely used as a support document for that effort.
Well, I was just thinking like a tower parking plan, you know, the city could float a bond issue and build a parking plan. This is kind of getting off the subject a little bit, but I think those types of conceptual ideas have a vertical parking lot on that property, and the city float a bond, and they finance it, and have the hospital pay for so many rental units. And the bond will pay, the rentals will pay for the bond. That's just, you know, the way you do business. And I'm sure you thought about that, Mr. Wright.
Stinky. Thank you. So if there's no objections on that money, that recommendation to reallocate the dollars to medical art from the general plan allocation to the medical art specific district, we can move forward if there's no other comments on that. Seeing none, let's move forward.
Okay. So the next slide we're going to look at is the fund budget at this time. So I do want to say that right now when it says unassigned fund budget of about 2.4 million, this is an unaudited number that we're still basing that number off of what we believe our 1819 is going to look at. So with that unaudited number and then with what we're currently at with the mid-year budget, we're looking at the reserve at $2,440,062 at the end of June of 2020. So still staying pretty consistent with where we were with the prior year. And right now that too is right around a 23% reserve, which is well within the 20 to 30%, which I do know we are working on getting back towards the 30, but we are still looking at staying above the 20% as passed by the council earlier last year. And then the restricted cash, just to let you know, that's when we have bonds, we have a little bit of money that's held within a fiscal agent. It's only $1,700. It used to be over $700,000, and that was due to the fact that when we refinanced the B Street property, that money went towards the new bond and was absorbed into the new bond, and so that's why the restricted cash has dropped. So it's money that we can't touch because it's being held for bonds. So that was our brief overview of the general fund. And that was only a quarter of my presentation. No, it's not. So these other slides will be much faster to go through because these are brief overviews of 3 other funds that we wanted to present that we are seeing some changes for some recommendations. So within the gas tax fund, we are looking, as you can see, the revenues, we've looked at the state reports that we do receive from the state, and we're looking of wanting to do an adjustment around 19,000. And then we're looking at increasing the expenditures of 289,769. So what this number is this is the amount of what our MOE is every year that we should be putting in. So we did not originally budget this in the budget season because after we had our street audit that I spoke to you about in October of 2019 after the budget, we found out that we had to transfer money from the general fund into, which we did last fiscal year, into the gas tax fund to be able to meet our requirements. So part of the presentation we came to with the street project, the $900,000 street project, is that we would be using $289,000 out of the gas tax fund to also pay for a portion of that, where the remaining amount is coming out of the general fund. So we're just letting you know it's there, it just wasn't originally budgeted because we didn't do that till after the fact, after the street audit. Dropped my notes. So that is it on the gas tax fund. So the next one we're looking at is the Citizens Option for Public Safety. Thank goodness we wrote it out, or otherwise known as this SLSEF fund. And so we're asking for a recommended adjustment of around $56,000 due to revenue. So this was an account that the police chief brought back a month or two ago that we asked to be able to expend more money out of this. That's why the expenditures are now at $244,000. This is one that we get every year regardless, and we've been budgeting $100,000 per year. So, but it's been bringing in more than that amount. So we've actually found out that it's been creating a fund balance has been rolling over and actually increasing every year. This is to supplement our, supplant or supplement?
It's to supplement.
Supplement. I always say the wrong term on that. Chief Sachs always corrects me on the terminology.
Supplement.
Yes, thank you. That's why I wanted a little clarification on that one.
Big difference.
So because of that, Chief Sachs did come to start spending down that funding because it does need to be spent. So we're just coming back to say that normally we would say the revenue was only $100,000. We're looking at a projection of $156,000 coming this year. So we're just looking for an overall increase in the revenue that's coming in based on the history. So this is one that we're still showing a fund balance of around $211,000 at the end of the year. And the police chief and I have been working on, along with city manager, on spending this fund down because this is something that we do, that we don't want it to grow to be, $500,000 sitting in there. It's supposed to be used for current year funding. So we'll be doing that again with the budget this current year coming up. Yep, it's one, as we bring it in, we should be spending it too, on the correct appropriations. So then our other last fund that we're going to talk about is our wastewater operations sewer fund. And right now, we're just looking at an adjustment down of the revenue of about $118,000. That is due to the fact that we did our miscellaneous revenue is trending higher, but our sewer collection is a little bit lower than what we thought. So when we built our budget, this was when we were just starting the 218, the sewer study for our rate increase. And at that time, we were doing some forecasting of what we believe our revenue would be, which we have, obviously through the sewer rate study, we know what that is. At this time, we did not, and so we had actually, even though it was conservative, we actually under budgeted where we thought we would, or over budgeted where we thought we would be. So this is just an adjustment down for that reason. For the next fiscal year coming up with the budget, with the rate study and with the 218 study, we know where our revenue is going to be, so we won't have to come back, or we should not have to come back with a line item like this asking to reduce the overall revenue coming in.
That sewer fee collection reduction, is that the promise that we, to the residents, that if we had an income greater than what we needed, that we would reduce it?
This is your standard monthly fee that we get paid every month, correct? So we're not saying this that we're going to go back and increase next fiscal year.
No, it says reduce to reflect current activity.
Correct. We are bringing in a little bit less than we thought because with the new study, we weren't sure the dates, how it was going to be passed, so it was all based on projections on this one. Kind of like the sewer bond, we over-projected, some places we under-project, but we'll have much more solid numbers going into the next fiscal year now that we have a full study under our belt. So that is all the funds. So the next part is just going to be a brief overview so you can see. We've been working with Andy Heath. He's come back a few times that we do have a 7-year forecast and a financial model. So this slide is just to show you with the current budget we have and the changes, and then taking out all of our one-time expenses for the future, you can see where we're at or where we see our forecast is for our general fund. So right now, we're looking at, sorry, the numbers I can't see up there, of this fiscal year that we were going to spend about $372,000 of our reserve, which was originally approved with the budget when we decided to spend $388,000. We're actually reducing that slightly because we've shown here that we'll have more revenue than we will in expenses. And then after that fact, if we take out all the one-time monies that were approved in the current year budget, you can see where we see that our general fund is going to be from year to year. So we're looking at end of next fiscal year that we would bring in an extra $229,000. So it would be increased. So this is just to show you what that trend looks like, building it into the 7-year model. Sorry, this one, I was just showing you how much, what the difference would be between your revenue and expenses. Sorry, that was the first sheet. This next sheet is the one that shows us what our unassigned fund balance would be. So right now for 18-19, we're looking at around the 2.4 million, which we talked about, which is the 23%. And then if we kept the status quo with our budget, this would be where we would be with our ending fund balance from year to year. So going from 23 to 28 to 28 to 34%. And this is taken into account the refunding of the bonds and the UAL payments and how that helped us. And then the last is just to show you just a graph of what our CalPERS UAL payments were. Of course, this current year, it shows higher because we paid off large amounts for the future, and then we also had current year payments that we had to make. And this was most of this was offset by the majority of it by all of our bond proceeds. And then you can see where we're going to go from year to year, that our payments are going to drop, they're going to go up, and then they're going to drop. And that was originally in all the forecasting we saw, that we were going to increase slightly and then peak out, drop a little bit, and then a slow increase. So this is just letting us
Jennifer,
know.
help me with, and this just might be, I don't know what, just something caught my eye, the previous slide.
Unassigned fund balance.
Yeah. The last two don't make sense to me. The 41%, I can see that $4 million would be about 41% of about, and then 37 is not 40, 37, I mean that our budget is about, I don't know, $7 million or something?
So I'm going to refer to Andy and see if it was a typo on our end.
Yeah, I think I just noticed that too. That's a
Okay.
cell issue.
Yeah.
I think it's higher than that, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just threw me off there.
Check on that.
Okay. Just checking.
I see
5%
right, yeah,
difference.
I see that. Well, formatting issues, we'll check that one out. So after that is all said and done, and so our recommended action is that the city council adopt the updated revenue budget and expenditure appropriations for the city's general fund, the wastewater operations, and capital funds consistent with the changes that we recommended here in the report I just gave.
Thank you.
And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Okay, any comments from the public on this matter?
Stuart Gilchrist, 101C Street. I think it's an excellent idea to recommend the reallocation general plan monies to Medical Arts District, as Lom Hadamia created an amazing economic impact report for the water agency to Yuba County, and Yuba County's only growth was in the Medical Arts District in 2017. So that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, any other comments from the council members? Otherwise, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the recommendations by staff to update the revenue budgets and expenditures and appropriations in the city's general fund, wastewater operations, and capital funds, consistent with what was presented, and that would mean to approve resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2019 mid-year budget and any associated amendments. I know that was long, but is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's approved. The vote of 5-0. Thank you so much for all that work. And there you go. You have new positions funded and everything.
Thank you.
So go get them, Tiger.
Thank you.
Got the bucks.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we're on.
Item 8, grant California Department of Transportation Active Transportation ATP supplemental agreement. The recommendation from staff is to approve the resolution authorizing the city manager or her designee to advance the ATP grant that was approved in 2017 Mr. Platt.
Mayor and council members, so this project is a long time coming because it started clear back in 2016.
We've been pushing this marble for a while now.
So with that, the history I have was that the project was approved in September of 19th of 2019. Went out to bid. We received one proposal, which started the process of trying to get a single bidder qualified under Caltrans rules to move the project forward, which required a C-10 form process, which then comes back to Caltrans that we followed all the proper procedures in how we advertised the project. That subsequently, in the last couple months, they've changed the process from a form submitted to district office to now an online submittal, which is at risk basically within the form, so they don't approve it anymore. So you update the information, submit the form, and finally we got back here just actually a few weeks ago that it's an at-risk base, so that we followed the proper procedures. So with that, also I was asked to provide some information on what the project scope was because of how much time has passed since it was submitted. We don't have plans and beyond that because we haven't got that far yet. So normally this would be just something that would be on the agenda on the consent calendar because all we're approving is the signature to accept the funds. So we're doing the PS&E part of the project, which is the $73,000, which was the original engineer's estimate and required a $10,000 city match. The city had actually allocated $68,000 for the total project. And right now we're just doing, like I said, the PS&E, which is the design and engineering. So we have a presentation that we put together for the slides, so you have a visual effect of what actually was being done. It's bike paths, bike racks, and sidewalk improvements throughout the city. It's quite extensive. There's a lot of slides. The type 2 and type 3 bike paths are set up.
So excited about this, by the way. Craig, thank you. Oh, thank you.
So here's the overview of all the affected areas for this project, which you can see it's basically across all of the city. So this was the first phase. Like I said, we don't have a set of plans, so actually somebody more smarter than me, I guess, actually was able to infuse this because every time I touched it, it wiped out all the overlays from the programming. So I'm assuming it was done in CAD. So anyway, I wiped out all the street names and actually somebody got it back on there. So. I'm flipping through so you can visually see, and I know you guys have a overlay of this.
Can you tell us about the type of lanes that you're building? The bike lanes, are they going to slow down traffic too? Is that part of the goal here?
There's no traffic calming within this. So as you know, a lot of the local city streets are extremely wide.
But this is not going to be like join me on a bike track?
This is to tie some of the existing trails and to expand it throughout the whole city.
These are existing ones and we're just renovating?
No, these are new ones.
Oh, these are new ones?
Yes, tying into some of the existing ones that are already out there.
So is there going to be any kind of conflict, or is there going to need to be a coordination of implementing this along with our roads repairs?
Absolutely. With every project comes maintenance.
Well, I'm concerned about doing it in the proper order, that we don't go do all this improvement and then
there's
go
always
back
going to be a conflict.
and overlay the whole thing with asphalt.
That's exactly what's going to happen over time.
It is.
It is, and it happens with every project. So to say your road's going to wear out at the same time you're going to come back and replace your
I'm
bike
talking about
isn't
us
gonna
putting
happen.
the new roads in. So if we put these, we're going to, we're gonna coordinate this so the new road goes in before all this striping and stuff goes in.
Well, I'm
Of the bike
hoping
lanes?
that, you're talking the CDBG, if we get that funding for all that area in East Marysville?
Yeah,
Yeah, obviously, that close to projects, we would coordinate to do this, because this has not gone out to bid yet. So this is just the design phase, and we're going to be coming back soon as we finish this process and request the funding for the actual doing the project, which we're hopefully doing the same thing with CDBG to put that out this year if the funding comes through.
Mind this ATP grant is a little old, I think, as we've already identified, and so it is on kind of a tight
Time frame.
we've run out of extensions, so we're working to get it done on
so
time.
is there a time frame then to use it also?
Use the funds?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to expend and do the whole
Because I'm
project.
just concerned, we go out there and we do all this striping, and I'm not against this, I love it, because Ricky's the happiest guy up here right now. But I want to make sure that it's coordinated with where we are doing a street repair, that we don't just go out and stripe it for the bike lanes and come back and overlay it.
We
do the
will
best
do
that
our
we
due
can.
diligence.
Okay.
We still have to keep the timeline and use the funds.
Yeah, can you just explain the green lines versus your paths? What do the green lines mean? I guess that's what you have like your paths, like on Kubola, on sheet 5, you have multiple, like Kubola, Ramirez. I imagine those are bike paths that you're gonna create?
Yes.
And then what are the green?
And the
like-
arrows show the direction of travel of tying in the project.
But
So-
then on bikeway sheet 6, you have green.
Yeah, because some are sidewalks, so there's some sidewalks
Sidewalk
improvements
improvements.
along with the bike path
you.
improvements. And it'll show that farther down in there, where those are. So this was interconnecting of some existing paths with some that don't exist. So it was trying to tie the whole network together.
Beautiful.
And so this basically breaks down the differential between a Class 2, Class 3 bike path.
And what are we doing? Or they're different throughout?
Well, it's based on the width of your street. So you see some of them on the bike path are 6 feet, some are 7 feet. So it really ties to how wide the existing road is where these trails and paths are going in.
I guess my point visually is still it's gonna slow some folks down, right? Because right now they're adding 21 feet in their mind that they can go as fast as they want.
Well, hopefully when people see a bike riding down the road within that, yeah, they're conscious of that.
But they're striping on it. You're striping the paths, right?
It's striped, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Craig, through the chair,
Yes.
unless we get some control over parking in the bike path lanes, that's going to divert the bikes out into the traffic flow of the street. And now, as you well know, the parking is an issue.
And most of the roads that were selected on this are the wide roads, which are actually a lot wider than a standard residential street. So that's why a lot of the path was taken on some of these streets that are as wide as a boulevard that actually are standard residential roads.
So you're saying you're going to move the bike paths out from the curb?
They are out from the side of the parking where you would normally have your vehicle on-street parking,
I've seen that.
which is really common. So, you know, you go into your large cities, you see the bike paths and they're always out there, and the turn lane always interferes with the bike lane. So you have to be very cautious about obviously riding and also cautious driving when you have all these bike
Will they
and
go in
pedestrian.
both directions, will they not? The bike paths will be into the street and off the curb so many feet?
The examples are right here.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm,
Yeah, your bike lane is never off of the side where you have your off-street parking. It's always in the roadway.
Yeah.
Outside, you're usually 12 and 12.
right, got it.
And I see a lot of ours have been narrowed down to accommodate, so they've down to 11 feet, where standard road width is 12 foot. And then usually 8 foot for parking, so 12, 12, 8, and 8. So I just put in there all the slides which were presented within the application. And so it details all the different specifics and streets that they were looking at.
East Street 11th, you're adding a visibility crosswalk. Where is that? Is that, who's that helping here? Is that part of the school? Isn't that already been done?
That's why I said it also ties in with some of the existing network
Thank you.
to make it complete.
Yeah.
And so this shows where the bike racks are going, which was part of the look at on D Street, which was part of the application process about people riding on the sidewalks, and it was trying to get the people off the sidewalks and actually in the street where they're supposed to be, and providing a connectivity from people that want to ride into work, putting bike racks out there so people had a place to put their bikes and secure them and lock them up. Because if not, I'm sure they'd end up in the riverbed somewhere.
Where's that map? Yes, Stephanie.
What is the timeline for completing this?
Oh, you're over there.
This was designed to be a very tight timeline with Bennett. They're actually within their proposal is a real strict, and as soon as we're done with that, we're going to come right back to council and actually go out to bid. So hopefully they have this completed with over the next several months, and we'll come back to council to bid the project, and then we'll be back here again to do the supplemental agreement for the remainder of the project.
So within this year?
That's the goal, yes.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So you said, Craig, that this had not gone out to bid yet. It has not gone out to bid yet or anything
No.
of that sort, so.
This is just the design phase.
So it's design phase, because I mean, just recollecting about 3 years ago, we were working with Yuba College Welding Department to build bike racks to go on D Street, but that kind of got kiboshed. Is this gonna go with whoever you go through the bid for, would find their own source for those?
For the bike racks?
Yeah.
No, they're part of the project, to place those bike racks.
I get it, but I mean, we were working with the college, the city was, for a time, and then that went away because of ordinance rules and so forth. So whomever is awarded the bid to do this project will find their own source for those pipe racks, is that what I'm understanding?
Well, when we bid the project, sourcing bike racks, which we can't do that. We can always accept ones if they're donated, which I've done before.
Sure.
And then we would place them wherever the council would designate within that
I
process.
guess maybe
But
what-
it's included in this project.
Well, Council Hudson's saying that I think the Yuba College would be willing to maybe be the subcontractor to build the bike racks.
Maybe that's better verbiage there. I was just kind of curious to see where it goes, and again, not wanting to muddy up the water, just kind of curious.
So
where
they
it's
have an
gonna go.
example, one next to the brick, across from the brick, they built one. And so I think that that's just an example of something, a product that they can maybe produce.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a sideline conversation you guys can
I think
have.
you're right, it is.
It is. The
Yes.
grant's going to fund it, so they're going to have to come up with somewhere. If it was donated and we wanted to install those, it's obviously a savings. So you could probably do that, but you're going to still expend the money one
Certainly.
way or another.
No, don't get me wrong. I mean, for an individual who lives on Highway East 22nd Street, I'm excited to see anything go down right now.
And I'm positive we could
So-
find some location in the city if that happened to where they wanted to put bike, that we could add them somewhere within the project.
Sure. Thank you.
So this is showing the crossings. There's also some radar signs that are going to go in there to delineate some of these crossings. So it's also has radar signs in there for controls, especially on busier intersections. So it's pretty universal and pretty broad of what the project actually is bringing.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Is this for crosswalks and so forth, are we talking about light control devices as well, like,
Yes.
I'm not asking for more stop signs by any stinking means, I'm just saying, across from the high school or something like that, they can,
Putting in a raised intersection, so there's some traffic controls.
thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I think part of this has already been done, correct, with the, over on Ramirez and then on East Street? Is this part of that, or is it different?
Well, this is on, 18th Street? So this is obviously on East, I believe Marysville, and Ramirez, yes.
18th Ramirez, yes.
Did we, okay.
So it's on 12th, and I cannot see the other half of that.
Because we had installed a pedestrian-controlled flashing light at 18th and Ramirez. So I think,
The beacons?
Yes.
is that this, or is there something
This is something
in
totally
addition?
different. If that was installed, I'm not aware.
Okay.
If that was it's not part of this project, because we
Okay.
haven't done anything with this
We had a
project.
separate grant earlier for that, I guess.
So a lot of times the schools, so if that's around the schools, they've also do those types of projects around the schools, and that could have been something the school actually did. I don't know that we did that. Okay. So this is, it's a good project. And maintenance, and I'm always going to tell you this, these are great, but we have to maintain these. And so it adds a cost and what we do as far as our striping, and that's going to be something we're going to talk about down the road.
How do you measure the value of a dad teaching his kid how to bike for the first time on a safe, calm?
Well, I'm not measuring it. I just say there's a cost.
Priceless, right?
Yeah.
So, through the chair, you're working a depreciation cost of replacement of striping and so forth. What does the average paint stripe usually last?
Well, I'm sure what we're doing here is actually not the paint, so it's probably the electro poly.
Got it.
What do you want to call it? Which usually goes down hot. It actually lasts
Thermoplastic.
because of our climate here a lot longer, because a lot of our streets are done that way. And a very warm climate, it burns it. And so you're doing that every several years, where this stuff should give you somewhere between 5 and 8 years.
Perfect, thank you.
You mentioned I was excited.
I know you are.
So you think you'll finish this by, say, the end of the year?
The goal is to get it out and get a bid this year and get the project started, because we need to get it built.
We'll tie that to the park pumps.
And so these were actually all visuals that were part of the application process of where the project is and actuals, street conditions, where this project is going. So this was an extensive application. It was actually done pretty well.
We hired a pretty expensive consultant, so.
And then that was the original, I left it in there, was the original project's estimate.
The question I have, Stu, through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Now, we're talking about storm drain management programs, and we're gonna do all this striping on these streets. What is our plan, if you will, vision on the storm drains, bringing those up? Because we're gonna have to tear the streets up to do those. That's a very extensive process, so will this come after that? I mean, I think Bruce asked this question.
Well, at some point, you're going to see your public works director come to you and bring something that's about roads that have been paved, about a no touch for 5 years, unless it's obviously an emergency. You can't stop a blowout in a line or those types of works. And something I will suggest is you cut a lane, you pave a lane. So you cut a 2-foot patch down the road for a water line going in there, they're going to pave a lane. A lot of cities have adopted that for this reason, to try to deter projects and coordination. So when projects come in, they actually get all that work done prior to that. It is a coordination, so we're working on making sure we notify all the other parties that if we come in there and pave a lane or pave a road and do all those improvements, that we don't want it cut 6 months later or a year later, that most cities have adopted a 5-year moratorium on cutting other than emergency work. And then your patching is done a lot differently, where you do a large swath, you do a grind, so when you do a patch, you have a good patch. Right now, patching within your cut, it always is going to settle. So those are the things we want to eliminate moving forward.
Yep.
So we're going to be very cognizant of those types of things moving forward.
To the chair.
Yes, sir.
So, all we're approving right now here is the money to move forward with the engineering money?
We already have the money. This just approves for us to sign the supplemental agreement. Like I said, normally this would
For
just
the
be a
engineering-
formality.
For the engineering and design,
Yes.
right? Okay.
And
Not
as soon
for
as
the-
that's finished, we will go to bid, and then obviously we'll come back to council to award that, and then we'll have to sign that agreement with the state.
But do we have the money for the implementation?
Yes, the entire grant has actually been awarded and received by, this
Yes.
is really kind of a,
It's a formality just to
formality,
do
thank
that.
you. And our local match for the grant has already been budgeted in the budget. You guys approved it last year in the
Yeah.
budget, actually.
And that was actually for the whole project, the 68,000, we're going to use 10,000 of that for this part of the project.
Gotcha.
That's at $68,000.
Is the entire match for both design and construction.
Any other questions? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the recommendation from staff to approve the resolution authorizing the city manager and her designee to advance the ATP grant that was approved in 2017.
Make a motion.
Motion,
Second?
second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion is approved, the vote of 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
council.
Let's move to item 9, approve a revoc, oh, you gotta help me with this word. Say that again? Revocable lease agreement with Kinder Morgan Pipeline. The recommendations to pass a motion to approve the city manager or her designee to execute a revocable, sure, lease agreement with Kinder Morgan Pipeline. And, there's someone, refrigerator always kick my butt. Mr. Wright. how
Good
you
evening,
doing?
Mayor, council members. Jonathan Wright, Community Development. I'd like to start out by recognizing in the audience, we do have 3 members of Kinder Morgan here today.
I wonder who the fellows were out there. Thought they were gonna buy beer or something, but
Yeah, I told them, I saw 3 items on the agenda. I said, you guys are going to be out in like 20 minutes, but I lied to them, so now I owe them the beer. We have Alan Four, Vice President, Public Affairs, Ryan Dahl, Manager, Pacific Region, Land and Right-of-Way Department, and Will Hartley, Right-of-Way Agent, Land and Right-of-Way. So if you have any technical questions, then they're here to answer those. Otherwise, in 1961, the city granted Kinder Morgan a license to operate and maintain a natural gas pipeline along the Union Pacific Railroad and parallel to A Street, where it still exists today. However, because of actions by the railroad, currently dismantling and relocating its trestle bridge across the Yuba River, Kinder Morgan must also relocate and better secure its pipeline in order to execute the project. Kinder Morgan is seeking to relocate a portion of its pipeline and update its lease agreement. The attached contemporary agreement would replace the 1961 agreement that contains now modern insurance and liability language as well as compensation, which was something we had not received before. The agreement has been approved by Kinder Morgan and would result in an annual payment of $10,000 with a 2% escalator per year. Staff recommends you pass a motion to approve the city manager or her designee to execute a revocable lease agreement with Kinder Morgan Pipeline. I would like to note that the reason that we are getting $10,000, and these guys could plug their ears because they were, that's not going rate as I understand it, is the city manager beat him to death.
Oh.
No, no, to her credit, she drove a hard bargain, great negotiator, and came out on top for the city, so kudos.
Thank you, city manager. Any questions for
Chair?
Mr. Wright? Yes, sir.
Is this just the portion going over the Yuba River, or is there any other parts that's within the city right now that's being replaced? Just a portion that goes over the river?
That's correct. It's the portion adjacent
To the river.
river crossing parallel to the railroad tracks.
Okay, personal note is I own a business within 8 feet of the Kinder Morgan line on a 4-foot cap, so that's why I'm just curious. Concrete cap right next to my place. So nothing's gonna be touched in the city, it's just right next to the river. Thank you.
did they UP secure that? I mean, this is off the topic, but I mean, are they done with that work, whatever they were securing out there? Do you know?
And back to these guys.
No, I don't know. Do you guys know if UP is done with their improve?
Work is still in progress.
Okay. It gets noisy out there.
We don't know the status of UP specifically, but it looks like it's ongoing.
Thank you. Any questions from the council members? Any questions from the public or any comments? Seeing none, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion to pass, to approve the city manager or her designee to execute a revocable lease agreement with Kinder Morgan
So moved.
Pipeline. Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second. The right side's still winning over here, left side. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion's approved with the, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Yep. Appreciate it.
That was a long wait.
Any committee reports?
Just that we had our first ad hoc for the lake. Had a discussion with Jonathan Craig, Ricky, myself, and Marty, Matt, trying to put some kind of a format, I guess, to take to the Yuba Water Agency meeting and give a little bit of a presentation of what we'd like to see come out of it.
And that meeting's on March 9th, next Monday?
Yes, I
Yes.
believe so, yeah. Isn't it?
I think that's right, yeah.
Any questions on that?
Yeah, I'd like to, through the chair, I'd like to know just exactly what's being recommended. I think the city council should have some information on what's being recommended by this committee.
Actually, it wasn't any, it's not a recommendation
Well, that's
of
what
any
I heard
type.
you
We
say.
just, well, I probably worded it wrong then. I guess it was just more of,
Of a format?
An approach, a process?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
because-
right. We're to approach a process of how to get to where, what we would like to bring to the table.
Yeah, because I want some transparency on this.
Sure.
At least
Well,
for 7
we
more months.
were keeping all the money for ourselves.
That's all right, but I want to know where the money's being kept.
No. I think the bottom line is, I think staff are looking for some recommendations how to move forward with the water agency. The water agency, I think, has been very clear on their willingness to support the improvement of Ellis Lake, including the health of the water, and two, in working on a master plan for the lake in the nearby area. So I think we listed those things in a way that we can now have a conversations in our next meeting on March 9th to say, these are the things that we think, this is how we would like to move forward. Specifically with the master plan, we'd like to have these things, I think we've talked about what do you call it, the green necklace of the lake, that we want to make improvements on that should be part of the work scope, or the scope of work for anyone who goes out and does the master plan. The health of the lake should be another item that should be included in their master plan. So those are just things that we've talked about and they'll be public if they do fund those type of things to the community, that we want them to be, we're gonna ask them to pay for the master plan. And what exactly do we want them to be, what is the master plan gonna look like? So that was what the conversation between staff and the two council members was about. So that's why, I mean, anything that's gonna be moved forward, of course, it's gonna come out to the public and during a public meeting, whether it's the water agency or here at the council meeting.
I just think there's to somewhat be a little more even simplified on that, was wanting to know what they're going to include, so we can then come back and know what we need to add to that.
Sounds good.
Okay.
As long as there's transparency to the council.
Any other committee reports? Any committee reports from anyone? Seeing none? We did also, I also did participate in a Trails Committee that the Water Agency put together as part of their economic development planning. They're looking at engaging with different entities throughout Yuba County and even working with folks in Sutter County and Yuba City to ways to build kind of an expansive set of trails throughout the different, from Wheatland to Marysville to up the hills and to other areas. And so right now, we're just kind of going over exactly what different people are doing. Like we kind of, we share with them what our current plan was with today's being, acting on the ATP grant. We kind of share that with them. And so they're just kind of getting a sense, and probably the next steps, we're going to bring back hopefully a resolution to share with the council on some of the things that we can try to work together as a group and the different entities, so include other governing agencies, whether it's levy districts, counties, cities, to try to figure out, can we agree on working together on an expansive set of trails that is going to connect the river, the waterways, the cities, the urban areas, and some other, maybe recreational activities like bird watching or whatever it may be. So there's going to be there's a lot of energy in that, and I'm looking forward to continue participating. But I think the next steps is to bring something to the council so we can explain some of the work so that you guys all will be on the same page on things that we want to move forward on, what we can expect from this group. Seeing no more comments, we'll move to council correspondence.
None at this time, Mayor.
No, thank you. City manager report.
Yes, Councilmember Simmons asked if I'd maybe make a few comments.
Don't lay that on me.
All right, well, I was going to give you a couple updates. So when it comes to the coronavirus, it's now come to the region, and I'm going to be meeting with this Yuba Sutter health officer tomorrow morning, and the police and fire departments are both starting to develop a plan on how we can be prepared in the city, especially as our first responders could be responding to situations where there could be possibly, a situation where someone has contracted the coronavirus. So we're trying to get, more and more prepared internally in the city, and if we have something we can report out to the council, we certainly will do that. Ellis Lake Fountain, I think everybody knows, right, about that today, that happened, and so the Public Works Director will be making some checks this week to making sure it all works, and hopefully we'll have some sort of ribbon cutting in the next week or so. Once we know that the lights and the pumps and everything work, right, Craig? Ellis Lake water sampling results are out, and the council has received hard copies, those who are interested, and we'll be doing a staff presentation on March 17th about that. It's a little bit preliminary and sort of teeing up, furthering that conversation about Ellis Lake Master Plan and how that would influence the master planning process. CDBG application, the fire truck application has been submitted. We're waiting to hear a response. We're still waiting for the environmental document from the State Historic Preservation Office so that we can submit the roads application, so that's still pending.
Do we need to get a hold of Gallagher or Nielsen to put pressure on this office?
I think that our grant writer feels like we're still within the 30-day time frame, and that we will get it in time, but I certainly could make that effort, yeah.
I mean, if you could call Laura Nichols and just kind of explain to her to see if they can put some pressure on that office.
That sounds good. I will do that tomorrow. The last couple things I just wanted to mention is the SB 68 Parks Grant application. I know the council knows this, but unfortunately the city was not successful in those 3 applications for veterans, Gavin and Miners Park, but we are looking at ways that we can use possibly some other funds and other partners in the region to address some ways we could move some park projects forward, hopefully fairly soon. And then lastly, the Marysville Hotel. The Community Development Director has been able to set up a meeting with the property owner of the Marysville Hotel, who's actually going to come visit us next week in the city of Marysville, and we'll be visiting with lots of people here while he's here, so hopefully we can get some movement on that project as well.
Good report.
Thank you. Council comments, Ms. McKenzie.
Well, I attended the Chamber Gala on Friday night with Marty, and I went to that, and it was beautiful. and the room was packed full of people. And it was just really great to see the progress that the chamber has made in the last few years under the new leadership. And Marnie's just done an outstanding job. And so I just really, they are doing so many things to support our businesses and ongoing programs being developed to help strengthen business owners and their knowledge of doing business. And so I think we might consider supporting them next year, maybe. But we have Freedom Home Health, who's located here on D Street. It was one of the award winners, so proud of one of our local businesses, and others too. Salem, they're all local, but we had a Marysville name in there, so that was exciting. And that's it.
Mr. Hudson?
Not much. Kind of looking forward to the Marysville Firemen's Appreciation Dinner next Saturday, and hopefully it's good grub. And I was happy to be able to attend for a few minutes to the police officers' appreciation ceremony last week, and that was short, quick, sweet for me. It was a busy weekend. So I just want to say good job to all you guys and the staff and everything with everything you're doing with the city and the roads and the parks. I'm kind of digging the idea of striping. This all sounds pretty good, making the city look better. Thank you.
Mr. Simmons?
Yeah, I'm just curious, where are we with the amount of, a little bit of money we're putting into the chamber for the transit occupancy program that we volunteered to contribute to, that I haven't heard, none of us heard anything about? Where is that? There was another, I guess I'm a little hazy on what it was about. Maybe Marty could help me. But we volunteered to contribute some money.
We, and Jennifer, I might need your help too, if you know, I think we contribute to the TOT, to the, are you talking about the Yuba Sutter Lodging Association? I think a little over 2% of our TOT.
No. I don't believe as part of our TOTs, an additional 2%.
Additional, so we
Yes.
have 10% that comes in the city,
Right.
and then 2% additional that comes in. And of that 2%, we keep 2% of the 2% when we send it
For
in for
administrative.
administrative costs. So every quarter, we send that on to the district, correct?
Well, I understand that. I don't really understand, but I don't know what we're getting for that money. There were supposed to have been some programs come to help us with our TOT, our tourism. What's going on with that?
We're not giving any money. The hotels are giving extra 2% out of their TOT. So the hotels are participating in this JPA or whatever they call it, Visit Yuba Sutter, which is an organization that's being funded by these additional 2%. We as a city aren't contributing any additional dollars from our TOT or our general fund. But you're right, there's a lot of issues related to what exactly are they doing and how they're benefiting our city. That's a good question.
Really, Mayor, I thought we were contributing something to it.
No, we're just a flow-through. We take the 2% on behalf of the hotels, and then we pass that 2% on to the district.
Well, I know that that's a growing fund. There's a lot of money in that TOT. It's going in the general fund. It's not going to where it should be going to in tourism and advertising tourism and economic development. I think we need to kind of look at that and see what we're doing. Since we're having this revenue coming in now, that TOT should be allocating some of that to the tourism program in the city of Marysville, and I don't think any of us going to that. It's going to the general fund. And we were using it to support. I understand that. But I think now we need to sit back and say, 30%, 20%, whatever the council wants to do, and the recommendation of staff to put that into a tourism account to help us fund tourism in Marysville. So we have a program here that could very well help with that if that's what the council wants. But we haven't put any money in tourism, absolutely none. And that there's a pretty good sum of money in there. I want to think about $18,000 or something like that in the tourism TOT. I don't know, that just off the top of my head. But you know, we have.
Can I suggest?
Sure, absolutely.
Can I suggest that I think when staff comes back with their goals and objectives, and they want feedback when they return, I think we need to maybe, if that's something that we want to kind of add as part of the projects, and one of the things that they're working, our consultants, is remember they're going to try to create a priority kind of matrix that when we insert projects or new projects or whatever they may be, that whether or not they're going to float up or not on our priorities. I see what you're saying. Again, it goes back to this idea when we sat during our planning session, is that these are all great ideas, but how do we make sure that we focus our resources and our staff time on those things that we all kind of prioritize? So that might float up. Again, I'm looking forward to the staff and their recommendations of what projects are going to be prioritized.
I think if
based
we
on
allocated a certain amount of funds to Mr. Wright over there, I'm sure that he could use that creativity to use that in economic development. Yeah, that's what I thought.
There you go.
So, anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Buttercole, Vice Mayor?
A couple things. I wanted to say, Councilman McKenzie and Simmons, we went to the Sister City luncheon. From what I've understood is we've kind of been underrepresented there. And so I think it was great that we were there. There was a gentleman there, and I believe his name was Mr. Lee, I can't remember off the top of my head, who was one of the grand poobahs of the whole thing. And I communicated with him by email afterwards a couple times. And he was as thrilled as you can believe that he was talking with the Marysville Council. I was thrilled talking to him of who he was, but he was so thrilled of talking. So I think it was just, it was really a nice event, and I'm glad we ended up being there to represent it. The other thing, I met with Dee Dee and Carrie on the Peach Festival. They look, obviously, for the music part of it, it looks like they're moving along with it really well. And I wanted to say one thing. That look on your face about the appreciation dinner, you do know you're having one, right?
Yes, something I can plan for.
Okay, you had a look on your face like you didn't know what he was talking about. And then the fountain, you know, some of you know, I mean, I've been on that fountain working on it since the 80s when we rebuilt it the first time and got the thing working. I don't know if we ever got the lights working properly, but to see that coming along, you have no idea how happy you made me.
Almost
Were
like
you on the island?
It was a big team effort with the staff, council, and Yuba Water Agency, which I got lit up today by the Yuba Water Agency for calling them the YWA. So please do not call them the YWA. They're the Yuba Water Agency. But anyway, I am totally thrilled that we got that on. I can't wait to see the lights on it when that happens. So, and then just lastly, I'm just wondering if you could have given us or can give us a little bit on the 4th of July event. What's going on with it?
We're still working on it. We got informal committees kind of set up a little bit for trying to find funding, working with yourself and Mayor Samoya, trying to work on a 2-part event for this year's 4th of July, which is on Saturday, July 4th, which historically, 4th of July has been huge in the city of Marysville some 16 plus years ago. And we're going to still do it as a bi-county event between Yuba and Sutter counties, working with my counterpart, Mark Boomgarden over at Yuba City Councilman, and we just want to have a good show again this year, but unfortunately cost goes up. It was a great success last year. So that being said, I don't really know what the numbers were for the people that attended it on both sides of the river, but it was more than what was expected after a 15-year hiatus. So the show is going to be a little more expensive this year, mostly because we're also trying to take into consideration public safety staffing, as well as vendors and so forth. Part of it is that we're going to do the fireworks show as part 1. That's got its own contingent with finding funding. And then a second part of it is going to be, we're going to try and do it looks like it's going to happen, a free music event in the Riverfront Park that Bruce, you were helping me out with logistics of sound and artists, which is not something I have any sort of skill set in. I've got no musical talent whatsoever in my body, so I'm glad you're helping out with that. That's going to have its own funding requirement for that. We're also hoping to get some vendors down there that are going to go through the city process of getting permits to work within the city and so forth. I talked with Marty a little bit about this the other day. And so, you know, get the word out. and delegate it, and Rick, you help me out with those vendors and so forth. We're also going to try and find a nonprofit, like Back the Badge or something like that, that might be able to help us with having a beer dispense down there and so forth, but that comes with its own ABC license and requirements and security and so forth. So that's something we're kind of working with that will not hopefully affect our local law enforcement needs at that particular day. It will be its own type of situation, but a free event with some strict parameters. No safe and sane down the riverfront, no tailgating, so forth. And just a good event for both sides of the river. It's a good event to get everybody together. It's also going to work in conjunction with the fact that Yuba City has a 4th of July parade every year that starts typically around 10 a.m. And, start with their parade, then work its way into people coming over and doing picnicking, and then have the music. We're still trying to figure out the logistics when it's going to start between 6:30, therefore. 3 different artists go for about 3 hours, a little bit of changeover in between. And then as soon as the last song is sung, light it off for a show that hopefully lasts about 20 plus minutes. Of course, it being Saturday, the vendors want more money this year, so I'm negotiating that right now.
One more thing, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to finish with, was just throughout the weekend for the Buckeye, I talked to a lot of our police officers and the fire department, our firemen, and those guys did such a great job, I got to tell you, and they were so pleasant throughout the whole weekend. I just want to tell you, your guys did a great job, and I would have liked to told Chris too. So.
Wonderful. I'm excited for you about the fountain as well. Were you on the island when the water got?
Today?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I was riding around the helicopter.
Did you? Nice. Cool.
You were the guy hanging out of that thing.
I would have liked it then.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I met up with a group from Field Haven. As you know, they're the folks who are assisting our animal control program with the trap, neuter, and release program that they do. And their numbers are just phenomenal, the amount of animals that they are capturing on a monthly basis and neutering and basically making the populations of feral cats in Marysville healthy, and which means there's less opportunity for contamination even in the water or other things that an unhealthy population of feral cats comes with. I think their goals is to slow down the population. As you're neutering these animals, you're assuring that they're not going to reproduce, and hopefully reduce some of the population numbers. And I think they're doing a phenomenal job. If you have a chance, they actually opened up a headquarters here in Marysville. They were in Lincoln. Now they opened up an actual office here in Marysville on 6th and 7th. 7th, thank you. 7th and thank you. 7th and B. And so you have a chance, go visit them. They're really warm, great people. They're amazing people, and I really think the work that they're doing is really fabulous for our city, and they're providing a great benefit to the city. So just if you have a chance, go visit them and see all the work that they're doing for our community. I'm really excited about moving forward with the ATP grant and moving forward on something that it really has taken me probably as many years as I've been as a mayor. I think it started with the bike and path master plan that we put together, and that allowed us to apply for some grants. And so Caltrans was ready to pull the plug on this because we haven't been able to, actually do the project. But Craig, thank you for moving that forward, and I think it's going to be great. It's going to be great improvement just for our city, for just amenities, just having safe paths, for bikes and other active, people like to be active in our community. We just want to make sure that we make it as safe as possible for them. And we have a great areas to visit, whether it's the levees or coming to downtown, and having those paths is really going to connect our different neighborhoods and communities. So thank you for the work, and I'm looking forward to, now that we completed that we can actually go after some additional ATP funding, including our tunnel underneath 14th Street, right? And then the bridge over on Highway 70 to connect the levees. I think that's another ATP type of funding opportunity that we can go after, but we have to complete this one to be able to go after those fundings. So with that, let's move to closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiator, city designated representative Brant Borson, city attorney, regarding unrepresented employee, city manager. There's no reportable action, and we'll adjourn. We're actually reconvening to open session, and we're adjourning to our next meeting, our special meeting next Tuesday, folks, March 10th, 2020 at 6 p.m. That should be a very short meeting.